Testing one, two. All right, audio appears to be working. It is currently 12:33 and 33 seconds. Welcome to episode 1 of Masscast News, brought to you by Grobo and me. I am Matt, the founder and CEO of Grobo, and we're going to be talking about what is happening in the news in the world of business, specifically the mass news, marketing, AI, sales, and how to scale your startup or business in general. So I'm going to do some final checks here, and then we are going to get right into all of the awesome news that we have to talk about. I don't know, is there anything actually happening in the news? You guys heard anything? I mean, it's been pretty slow news week, right? Nothing significant happened at all, right? Well, of course, that's not true. But we're going to get all into it in just a sec. Let's see if we are streaming on YouTube. Sweet, looks like it might be working. Awesome. We are in business on YouTube at least. And we're going to check to see how we're looking on X.com. So I'm streaming this from my profile. Just search for Mattack, Mattack, or what is my handle? I have like no followers. I'm just starting out here on X. I am Mattack at I am Mattack on X. All right, so I realized I was so damn good looking. All right, so let's get into the news. Let's start with this segment. Let me begin this way. So JP Morgan had this quote. He was once asked what was the secret to his success in business and life. J. Pierpont Morgan, the founder of JP Morgan, today one of the still around, um, over 100. Has it been over 100 years since he founded it? Well, the bank is quite old, um, but obviously he founded it. Very successful guy. I believe he helped to bankroll the debt of the nation at one time. He was so wealthy, so helped to bail out the United States. That's how much money he had. Um, he was considered one of the robber barons, I believe, of the day, and he was affected by the antitrust laws that were later established to combat what you know people and the government saw as monopolies that were forming and too much wealth and by extension power accumulating in the hands of too few people like Rockefeller and J. Pierpont Morgan. But he was a hard worker without a doubt to build what he did build um, in the company of people like Rockefeller and Carnegie. And he was asked what was the secret to his success. And he said, the secret is I would wake up every day and I wouldn't stop working until everything on my list of to-dos that I'd prepared the day before was done. Just wouldn't stop working. Just cross it off, keep going, keep going, keep going. And, I have this list over here myself. I have my own proprietary productivity system. I can talk about it another day if it's of interest to you, but I've developed it over a extended period of time. It's called the Dome Task System, DDOME, the Dome Task System. D stands for done, and then another D, do. O stands for order, M stands for minutes, E for energy, and task. So basically, the way that it works, it's sort of like formatted like a table, if you can see on the video. And each day I will write down what is the task that I'm going to do. Over time, it becomes more and more structured. Like I'll just kind of have like the tasks sort of pre-filled. Like I learned, all right, like lunch and shower kind of go together. Journaling and planning is at the end of the day, but I have it kind of by default written in there so I don't have to actually rewrite it. And anyway, I just pre-plan my day, exercise, and what is my kill task for the day. That's always the most important task. I have to be willing to beg, borrow, steal, and kill in order to get that one task done above all others. And usually, almost always, the day starts with the kill task. So it is the most important thing that if you did nothing else for the day, that one is going to get done. And today was the kill task was redoing this demo video. Um, but yeah, that is part of my daily routine, and I pre-plan it, and I say like, okay, what's the due time? What's the order? What's the minutes? And I try to have kind of like a game to see if I can beat the schedule that I've already set up. And each time I cross something off, I get a dopamine hit. So it's somewhat gamified, which is good. Um, and this is part of how I have been able to actually build a million multi today it's in terms of total sales, aggregate sales, multi-million dollar business. We crossed $1 million in revenue for the first time in 2021. And you know I'm not going to tell you I've made it. I'm not going to show you my Lambo. I'm not going to do any of that, um, because I haven't bought a Lambo. Maybe someday I'll rent one, but um, every business has its challenges and problems, and we are scaling right now. We are growing, and I don't believe in talking about problems before they're solved. So more on that for another day. Um, but I can talk to you about lots of other problems and stories that we faced as the company has grown and scaled here. Um, but getting back to JP Morgan, yeah, just it is really easy to succeed today. It really, really is. I don't know if you've noticed, but I think social media and all of the screens that we're surrounded by, they kind of make us soft. They make us soft, squishy consumers. And this is both a problem and an opportunity. It's a problem because I think compared to certain past generations, what would be normal for them, would just seem like holy shit. Like you are hard, you are tough compared to us. Like we are made. What are we made out of Jello? Um, so I really believe in callousing your mind, but that's also the opportunity because if you take yourself seriously, if you discipline yourself to actually get work done, there is no limit to the opportunity that you can realize, especially today. I mean, in terms of the news, what has happened this past Tuesday, making it, becoming more official, early Wednesday morning, I think around 3 a.m. Just a political earthquake. And we're going to talk all about it. But uh, we are entering a golden age. Optimism uh, in business, economically, and just for the future in general abounds. Not everyone agrees with that. And we will talk about that too. Um, I am optimistic. I am sincerely optimistic. Um, I think it's going to be it's an amazing future that we are headed into. Uh, you know, knock on wood, anything could happen, but hopefully all will go smoothly. And I wish the new or returning president the absolute best. Um, so I'll be working myself on producing more than consuming. Um, getting back to the point I was making a second ago. But let's actually start with this just amazing video that I came across on social media. Mark Andreessen who's the venture capitalist and founder of Netscape from the 90s, highly intelligent guy, it seems like. And he reshared this, and this was produced by another YouTuber who I will soon give credit to. Let's go ahead and play it though. So I'm just getting used to this new tool on called Restream, and let's check it out. Feel the energy. Isn't that great? Isn't that absolutely just amazing? I mean, just again, take a gander at the music one more time. Just the visuals. I mean, it's somewhat nostalgic. It just jumps around in time, shows things that are more recent, things that are from the 90s, the dot-com, you know, Tesla, Optimus robots, Jensen Wang under NVIDIA, SpaceX, Tesla references, development of the PC, Bill Gates, uh, aircraft, quantum, where has what is the path we're on? Accelerating, going. Leo is all to move. Right. So we've got a long road. And let's get into the latest news. All right. So with the election, how to see the election. And again, I my goal with Masscast News here is I want to share my thought process for how I see and evaluate reality. Um, and it's through a lens and a philosophy that I call nothism, meaning to begin from the basis of no preconceived biases or notions, and to be fully open to new and even contradictory information. I don't think that you're capable of learning and changing if you are not starting from that basis, or in a way where if you construct some sort of a knowledge structure around a topic, especially politics, um, and if you're not open to being wrong, I don't think that when it comes to other things like business specifically, that that is a beneficial view to you. I don't think it's going to serve you well professionally in business, and I don't think it will serve you well personally in life either. So there are many frames. So that's kind of like how I approach things in terms of thinking. And so far in business, it has served me well. It has served me incredibly well, especially at times when things looked dark, when things were very stressful with business, with life, where I just had to sort of evaluate what is the current state that I and or the business are in. And regardless of who or what is at fault or could be blamed, ultimately the question is or was, what am I going to do about it? It's like, and okay, so basically, and this is, for the first year I was in 2020, 2010 when I started the current business that I still have today, Grobo. We were an agency at the time, but like it was hard that first year. It was very hard. We ended up making six figures, and that was like, that was the moon to me. Starting with $200 in the bank and customers, clients just being our investors, so to speak. Um, but in those early months, I didn't have money for rent. I had to go out and sell the services that we had to offer. I had to go find people. I didn't know about marketing. So in a way, we became a company that's all about marketing and growth in part because I had to solve my own problem. And we were just originally, kind of a web design agency. So, and even then, like I didn't know what I didn't know. I figured, well, I'll do the design myself because I love design. But that lasted about 2 seconds, and I realized, all right, we just got this website design order for what first one was 7,500. I guess in today's dollars with inflation, it would probably be around, I don't know, 12, 13,000, something like this. So it's a substantial amount of money, but I realized that it was a one-time payment. So I had to go out and keep selling. And I realized also that I just wasn't, you know, passionate about, doing the work. My heart just wasn't in it. So but my heart was in the idea of building a company. And I knew that. So I immediately took the money and I just started building a team. I started hiring. Um, Again, I didn't know what I didn't know, but I just said, I'm going to figure it out. And I did. I did. I think that naivete is actually really useful a lot of the time, just kind of going into ideas. Right, these days, today, if I'm evaluating, like right now, I'm evaluating certain directions that we can take the business in this age of AI. We did test launch. It took us 6 months. We took too long to launch, but we did test launch our own SaaS AI platform, and it didn't work. It didn't work this past summer for a variety of reasons, which I can talk about in a future video if you're interested. Um, but make a note of that. I'll tell you some stories about that. So, so I think that the same mindset that you bring to evaluating other things like politics, which again I think is so relevant just watching and observing what happens in the news, and you can incorporate it into your daily life, to make better decisions, to have better, relationships, and also to make better decisions professionally in business as business owners. So, with that being the preface, the election, how to see it. I think there are many frames and narratives that are uh, out there that are developing. Um, and I've actually collected a number of videos that we can take a look at. So, one of the frames that's out there is this contrast, right? So, if learning the is the contrast between 50% of to the center, moving to the center, not politically, not moving to the center politically, just moving to the center of the video frame here. So, because I don't believe in, like, what the hell is the center anyway? I mean, if you have 50% of your views on one side and 50% on the other, in terms of sides, because apparently everything gets politicized, does that mean you're in the center? Because on average, you agree with both on some, and don't on you're one-sided on others. Like, what is the center? It's stupid how these paradigms develop, and we end up labeling ourselves, which actually in turn limits, I think, our ability to think objectively. We get into this tribal sort of a mindset, which is why I think it's detrimental to register as part of a political party. People argue the advantage is, oh, you get to vote in the primaries, you get to choose who you want to, um, get to choose who gets nominated. Okay, sure. Um, but it also perpetuates this, two-party system, which I don't think necessarily is really optimum. I think there is always a more optimum state that you can go for with just about anything. I think it is in life and in everything. It is almost impossible to know what is that optimum state. I think as humans, like, we just are un. It is unknowable just because of the nature of reality for us and how we experience it. But there is one single optimum state, just mathematically, for achieving, whatever it is, you're looking to achieve. So anyway, I'm an independent. I'm not registered to either party. I am optimistic about what happened in this election. I would have been pessimistic had the outcome of Trump being elected not happened. I think it's actually going to be very good for my business and many other businesses who are out there. So there are many frames and narratives: darkness versus exploding optimism. That's one of the frames that's out there, meaning 50%, maybe not 50%, but 50%, more or less, a little less than 50%, because what was it? I think he won the popular vote, which I think was really important. I think that had he not won the popular vote, I think that the probability of there being some dispute and or violence, riots, I think it would have been elevated, if he had only won the electoral college. So it was a decisive win across the board. Truly, hasn't even sunk in what I think I witnessed, watching it happen live. Um, so for a little less than 50% of the US, it's darkness. Darkness is descending over the land. And let's look at some examples of this. Let's see, what do we have? Let's look at one that is just kind of hilarious. Um, and we're going to again keep this in a business frame in terms of relating it back to business. So let's share the screen. And all right. So just enjoy this one, and we'll watch a few more. This one's meant to be funny, but allegedly it looks authentic. So this, to frame it up, this neighbor is watching his neighbor tear down her Harris Walls sign, for Kamala Harris. I guess by tear down, to take the stakes out of the lawn, whatever. So enjoy.
Hope your day gets better. Positive energy. Oh, hope your day gets better. Positive energy. Oh, hope your day gets.
Oh my god. All right, so yeah, that's what that woman is feeling is obviously real for her. But it is a dark reality where, as far as what I've heard from a lot of these videos that are out there, in their world, their rights are being taken away. I met this one girl at the gym. She was very pleasant, wasn't on this level. We were talking for a little bit because I was meditating and she was coming in to do some Zumba class. So we said hello. And she did not support Trump. She voted for Harris, obviously, um, from the discussion with her. And she was saying, I was just telling her, I was like, look. I was like, so how are you feeling? Because I was curious. And she was, she was obviously concerned. I said, just know it's going to be okay. Really, it's going to be okay. Um, and she was like, okay, well, I'll trust you, Matt. Like if I come back in 4 years and I'm not dead, well, then I guess I'll say you're right. And I was like, dead? She was like, yeah, like the rights and if I have a baby and if I, can't get access to care, I'm like, but you have the same amount of rights today that you had, before the election. And But it didn't really matter what I said, even though that is true, and even though every state is voting on the abortion question. Um, so so it's again, it's just an emotional reaction, and you can see it's. I don't think that I don't think that we should make decisions about policy that affect people's lives from an emotional standpoint. I think that we can feel emotion, that we should and can be empathetic as humans to one another, but I don't think in our search for that optimum that we should um, be making an emotion. I think we should strive for pure um, objectivity and rationality, so that we may find that optimum point where we can benefit, the most people objectively, measurably. So, let's see, any more? I think I have one other example I can show you. So let's look at an example of exploding optimism for the contrast. So this is from Naval, who is, I believe, an investor and a former entrepreneur, maybe serial entrepreneur. So Naval, who is well known, probably more so to influencers, or just if you're in the entrepreneur space in Silicon Valley, tech, you may have heard of Naval. He has these Navalisms. He's just very eloquent and precise with how he words things sometimes, and it's useful. It's very very useful frames that he puts around things based on his experience. Um, so I find him to be interesting to listen to. And he tweeted, let's see, November 6th. This was at midnight, exactly midnight. Upcoming deregulation wave will create an economic sonic boom. Upcoming deregulation wave will create an economic sonic boom. I agree with that. I think that at least the expectation of it, I think if the economy is seen as a psychology engine, we can expect to see just optimism again abound in the form of business owners and teams within companies, medium, large size companies, just making different decisions in terms of cash flow, in terms of money, in terms of where to put it, how to spend it. Um, we also see just other structural factors colluding, not intentionally perhaps, but going in the direction of where people are just going to want to be not holding on to cash, which is the Fed dropped rates another half a point. I believe it was either today or yesterday. And if people, if it becomes cheaper to borrow money to, invest it in the business rather than hoard cash or put into treasury bonds, T-bills, uh, then yeah, I mean, it's more likely that again, the economy, like the blood of the economy, the cash flowing between entities, businesses, teams, spending, it's all just going to flow more readily. And I think that is excellent for anyone who's providing a good product or service, because demand should increase as more investment and more movement of cash flow happens across the economy. So that's one example of darkness versus exploding optimism. Let's look at another one. This one is from the famous or infamous, however you want to look at it, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And let me make sure that the sound is on. Yes.
We are about to enter a political period that will have consequences for the rest of our lives. We cannot give up. We now find ourselves in a time in history that has precedent, and we find ourselves, I believe, in a time where there are, let's say, peers in history of mass movements of people that mobilize to protect one another in times of fascism and authoritarianism. And this is the era that we are poised to enter. Um, Donald Trump has talked about turning the military on U.S. citizens that he deems his domestic political enemies. Authoritarians and people that he affiliates closely with and strongmen abroad in regimes like that, it is not uncommon to jail political dissidents or legislative opponents. Um, this is the world that we very realistically may be entering.
Question is it realistically the world that we are entering? I mean, both of these things cannot be true. And you need to know what is true as a business owner so that you can best decide, you can protect your business. If in fact this is the world that we're entering, a world of fascism, I mean, then what we do about how we run our business and how we prepare for this new world of an authoritarian strongman, a dictator, a new mini Hitler, whatever label you want to put on it, known as Donald Trump. Um, you know, if that is the world that we are going into, um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe we should shut our businesses down. Maybe we should move them abroad. We would want to. Um, uh, I mean, I think what would happen. There's this famous experiment where you have a giant jar of jelly beans. There's an unknown number of jelly beans in this big jar. It's looks like it's probably thousands. or not more than 10,000, but somewhere in the range of, say, I don't know, 1,000 to 5,000. And what they do is they ask something like 100 people to guess how many jelly beans are in the jar. And what happens is that they take the average of all 100 people, and it is almost exactly correct. I think it's off by like one or two jelly beans, and it may have been a larger sample size, like maybe like 1,000 people they asked to evaluate exactly how many jelly beans are in this jar. So, and just from looking at it, not counting it, they're able to get it almost exactly right. Um, so in this case, if in fact we see no economic sonic boom, and by the way, just to kind of get back to the persuasiveness, the memorableness of that phrase, that tweet from Naval, a a wave. So wave is visual. You can see a wave and a sonic boom. You almost see like the jet kind of cutting through the air, the sonic boom, right? It crosses the sound barrier and there's a booming sound. Um, so that's a great tweet because it's simple, it's precise, it's visual. Um, it creates an expectation. Um, but that will not happen if in fact, the majority of people don't expect it. But it's likely that it would happen because the majority of the US population voted for this individual, Donald J. Trump. So, with that being the case, um, did more than half of the nation vote for Hitler? Does that seem likely? Um, did And also to what is her statement credible, where she says, that he is threatened to jail. Let's actually see if we can find it.
Authoritarians and people that he affiliates closely with and strongmen abroad in regimes like the military on U.S. citizens, turning the military on U.S. citizens that he deems his domestic political enemies.
So how will this reality play out? I mean, will it actually occur that Nancy Pelosi, for example, who is or media pundits who are against him, will they be rounded up and put into jails? It's possible, but is it probable? I mean, for someone to run a campaign and earn more than half of the vote, and to run a campaign that I think objectively won in part because it showed more competence in terms of the messaging and the policy and talking to people about, you know, as I don't know, in the 1980s, 1990s, they would call it bread and butter issues, you know, dinner table issues like what's the cost of bread, the cost of cereal, the cost of butter, the cost of gas. It's all going up. The cost of staying alive has just risen, and it's hard for people to keep up. You feel like you're treading water. That is a true and an empathetic pitch, and has resonated. And also people's fear of personal safety related to crime and border. I think it's estimates are between 10 to 14 million immigrants, um, legally or illegally, depending on how you look at it. Because I think it's illegal technically because they come and they claim asylum, and that's how the current administration for the next 2 months or so is keeping it legal, and that's why the word illegals is not really used per se, but at least lately. So, is this likely to actually take place? Um, I think that it's sort of like a trap. It's like almost setting a trap for themselves, and maybe it's intentional. It's hard to tell. I think possibly AOC is sincere in her believing that this is going to happen. That is possible. And I think that to her, it's possible that it will happen. It's just that w- others won't see it that way. So I think it is possible that if illegal like election interference from the 2020 election, for example, where I don't know, just an example where I don't know, Google, let's say, was guilty of manipulating search results, in favor of, one party, Joe Biden, for example. That would be considered, let's say, election interference, and I don't know what law would be breaking, but let's just hypothetically say that it would happen. But maybe someone goes to jail or is, fined or both as a result of that. Would that be retribution or would that be law enforcement? I mean, what I think is happening for a lot of politicians and just even ordinary people who have been fed this steady diet of like a single source of media, like say just MSNBC or just MSNBC and CNN. Although CNN really kind of moved to the middle for this election, I think what has happened is um, it's just setting expectation that this is what's going to happen, and no matter what the facts are, that it is it's it's going to be, oh, he's rounding people up, he's putting them in jails. But I mean, we saw 4 years, like there was, I think, a sarcastic cartoon like, did he just forget to be a dictator the first 4 years? I guess it's possible. Or did, oh, he couldn't do it because of whatever reason, like the Congress stood in his way or something. So that is the frame that's being set up. I'm pretty sure it's probably being set up so that when something does happen, it's because it seems likely that some people will be prosecuted. I mean, imagine, let's look at the other side now, which I tend to agree with more. And I think the truth is on this other side because let me put it this way. Imagine weaponizing the legal system against a political opponent and um, then calling that political opponent that you're weaponizing the legal system, using the legal system as a weapon against him, you're calling him the fascist when he was already president once. And, there people weren't rounded up. Um, he has said he wants revenge and retribution, but his revenge and retribution, he said, quote, will be our success. Um, I mean, it seems like he has a pretty extensive agenda. I mean, settling personal scores, maybe it's possible. And I think, but I think that Republicans just don't want to deal with it. Everyone is tired. And there's like taking the temperature of the audience. Everyone is tired of this stupid, divisive nonsense. It is irrational. It is brainwashing. It is propaganda. So, darkness versus exploding optimism. Which side are you on? Which reality is more fun and probably more accurate and more predictive in a way that you can make money? I think the exploding optimism one is the way to go. Versus darkness, where I know if you're a woman, you have no reproductive rights anymore, supposedly. You can get pregnant and you can die. And is that true? No, it is not. And you can die, but just to finish the thought, can you get pregnant and die because you cannot get the healthcare that you need? No, no. There are referendums and continue to be, votes at the state level um, for, whatever states want to do with abortion. I think in Florida, for example, it's 12 weeks. In other places, it's more or less permissive. So, um, let's say the other frame that I think is interesting to explain what happened is fear versus money. So let's actually go full screen for a second. Fear versus money. Um, Fear. from the Republican side, and uh, rather not money, fear versus identity. So fear, meaning fear of loss. According to Scott Adams, for example, in his book Win Bigly, Scott is the author of Dilbert. He brands himself as a trained hypnot. He is a trained hypnotist, and he studies persuasion as part of what he does for a living. And as he defines it, the most persuasive, if you were to like kind of ladder it, like highest to lower, least influential. So towards the bottom of the ladder would be analogies, like, oh, like that's like, I don't know, tax cut policy is like riding a tin cup through a needle or something. Analogies are too open to interpretation. They are good and effective for explaining concepts. They should not be deployed or used, s- you know, in your marketing, especially. You can use them to explain things like concepts or features or how your product. Like we use an analogy with my company, Grobo, where we say it's like project management software, but with proven professionals already inside, like copywriters, designers, developers, just ready to get work done for you. So it's meant to help people understand. But it's in terms of persuading people to take action, not so effective because, in part, politicians try to do it. Oh, it's like Swiss cheese through a jar, or it's like whatever they might say. Um, But what is at the top of the ladder in terms of most persuasive would be big fear, um, identity, little fear, and aspiration below that. And then one or two things, and then, analogies, for example. I forget what the one or two things are. At the top of the ladder, though, big fear just means you're scared of something. You're scared your personal safety is at risk. Your very existence, your way of life. Um, Identity below that is, who are you? Who are you as a person? Who are you in society? What do you stand for? This type of thing. Who are you as part of the? And I think especially for Democrats, it's more of a collective. I think it's. Um, I think there's just, unfortunately, as this election shows, it is more of a, and I think Naval actually put it this way. It's more of a collectivist type of mindset, which I think explains, some of the policies and how the thinking and philosophy tends to trend. I think there's a lot of really great intentions in terms of the intentions of certain policies that Democrats have come up with over the years and over even years before I was even alive. But in terms of the execution and implementation, it often leads to other problems, like untenable spending and debt, for example. Not saying that Republicans are in any way perfect on that, but it's just an example. Like, for example, the Green New Deal, if that was something like a serious policy that was to actually be implemented, this was from several years ago. The Green New Deal, it would like basically ban fossil fuels. I mean, basically, the if it was put into law, the economy and would just collapse, just overnight, just done, because it's not practical. Um, and also, I think in terms of identity and being related to more of a collectivist mindset, the Republican Party seems to be more bottom up, at least right now in history, in terms of ideas, and Democrat policy seems to be more kind of top down. And you can see it too with just all of the news media, the propaganda, which I think has really just done a disservice to people by effectively just in terms of persuasion, but it's very negative, the effect, where people believe, the world is ending and Donald Trump is Hitler light or Hitler, like, I mean, from the same news hosts, uh, some of the most prominent ones, the very next day, you don't hear anything about Hitler. It's actually kind of like, oh, it's like, oh, well, let's try to learn from this. And I don't know. I guess Hitler wasn't elected. It was just words that were being said. I mean, and Kamala Harris too. I mean, if really Hitler had just been elected, why would you concede so easily, and why give the speech that you gave? Which again, I mean, it was talking about fighting, kind of a defensive posture. I think it was more of a politicking posture to kind of like try to keep people unified. And I mean, this is harmful to the Democratic base for sure. A lot was lost for them. Um, there's no leadership now. There's no leadership for them. So fear versus identity. I think the Republicans, they were just more motivated. They're motivated and persuaded by fear of loss. My money is going to go away. And it was a big fear. Um, money might fall under like little fear maybe or smaller fear, but censorship also like, oh, I can't speak. I'm uncomfortable. I feel like I got chains on me when I'm walking around because if I say the wrong thing, I'll be accused of something. I'll be labeled something, you know, racist, sexist, homophobic, misogynist, whatever. Um, so there's like, the speech police, everyone's offended. It's kind of it seems more like it was about power dynamics and people just wanting power over others, honestly, even but without cause or merit. Um, safety and fear for the future. I think those were definitely the big fears. Um, would the future actually be good? Would the economy and the country begin to unravel if Kamala Harris became president? Um, so I think that is why Republicans won. I think that just the yes, you can say the policies were pragmatic and everything, but ultimately, I think it was fear versus identity. And the DEI, identity politics, woke mind virus philosophy, collectivist philosophy, where again it's like a snake that eats itself. And you literally saw this, and we'll talk about this in a second, where I mean it ate itself in the form of Joe Biden. Um, they valued power, um, and that was at odds. So they valued, DEI. There was no way that they could be compliant and consistent. It would be too blatant to pass over Kamala Harris. So they didn't. They made her the candidate. They thought that they could, I guess, get her through the finish line, get her over the finish line. The polls were most of the polls, some of them like Rasmussen and I think Atlas, who was also very accurate in 2020, were accurate, but a lot of the other polls were just nonsense. There's one poll, oh, she's up in Iowa by 7 points. Bullshit, complete bullshit. Um, so that was fascinating to watch. But yeah, it was the snake that ate itself because then Joe Biden felt stabbed in the back as he should. There was no, he didn't want to go. They lied about, they quote unquote, the collectivist entity that was around him, lied about his status, even though, and I mean, I even had friends who would say, "Oh no," like, and they were Democrats, like, "No, there's nothing wrong with him. There's nothing." It's like he's falling down multiple times off his bike on the stairs. He's falling down and walking across the stage to exit. Looks terrible. Obama, the word optics I learned during the Obama administration. The optics of that, oof, so uncomfortable, so awkward. I mean, you feel bad. It's like elderly abuse. Anyway, it's no wonder that multiple wars occurred, and the economy is basically a house of cards and other issues. Lots of illegal, over 10 million, I think, allegedly, um, 10 million entering the country as well, which is, you know, disruptive to any country when so many new people come in. It strains resources. I mean, where the people going to get jobs? Are they going to pay taxes or not? Are they going to have citizenship or not? Are they going to live in the shadows or not? All these questions. And then they have to be funded, to be housed and given meals and blah, blah, blah. So it's a mess. Um, but yeah, fear versus identity. I think that's one useful frame to explain why it happened, not just, oh, Trump had the better policies. I mean, I think he did talk, and that's kind of a rational explanation. But if we are thinking about, you know, if in fact it is true, and I think it is to a large extent, that we decide emotionally, we decide with emotions and we reason backwards. I think if that is true in this case, it is absolutely true that it was fear. And the fear was just so much stronger. And there was just such a smaller segment. I mean, I would estimate maybe 20% of the overall population that believed that Hitler was on the ballot, which is still a huge number, tens of millions of people. And I feel bad for them because when you hallucinate something, hallucinating is usually additive. This was a really interesting observation I heard recently. Hallucinating something is usually additive. Like you go out to the park and with your friend, and you come back, and your friend says, "Oh, did you see the flying dog? Flying dog? No, right? Hallucinating is usually additive." So some people saw Hitler, but in part, I think that was because of the media and the leadership that was trying to project that. Um, but certainly Kamala's policies were not. It just wasn't empathetic with what workers and people are saying that they are concerned about: inflation, jobs, safety, crime, and looking forward to a bright future. Signal versus sound. Trump had signal. Kamala was sound. Signal versus sound. In terms of, as you were just saying, just being tapped into the zeitgeist of what people cared about. I mean, Trump would bring up specific conversations in his, kind of long speeches at his rallies where he would say, you know, groceries. I go around and I'm just talking to people, and the word, it's kind of old fashioned. I just hear groceries. So he would talk about that. And that was signal that was informed by data that he was allegedly, according to him, he was hearing on the ground. And Kamala, I mean, I saw some of her slogans. I can't even tell you though, like what was she standing for? She was talking like there was some noise, some sound, right? Sound, signal versus sound. There's some sound about change, but seeing her interviewed saying like, "What would you do differently?" "Oh, I can't. Nothing comes to mind." Really? And then being interviewed in other cases where it just wouldn't make sense. Like some of the words, like she would really stumble through her words, or it'd be what people would call a word salad. And it's just hard to picture. And she would like laugh. Like, why are you laughing? I mean, it wouldn't. I mean, in some cases, like, okay, haha, like socially that makes sense. In other cases, it seems more maybe like a nervous laugh, or but it was like a seriousness that didn't seem to be on par with when you see other nations, especially other nations like BRICS, colluding to kind of form their own separate, monetary system, which is a threat to the U.S. dollar, and U.S.'s currency dominance. Concerns you, concern it's so that signal versus sound is another way to look at it. And DEI and the woke mind virus, uh, and intolerance versus leave us alone to create, build, and live our lives. So basically you had division on a what seems to be a superficial basis on gender and how people choose to identify. For example, a man identifying as a woman or woman identifying as a man. um, transitioning, all this stuff, and and race, so much about race. Um, and it would seem to be really ironic that a record like every time Donald Trump ran the last three times, he built. If the data is correct, you know, seems to be in this past election, he built his support across the board among women too. Um, I say that because there are a lot of women who are very angry at men for voting for Trump, but um, more women than ever voted for Trump this time. So, and yeah, and black, Hispanic, Asian, white, across the board. Trump significantly, I think it was something like 25 to 30% of African Americans voted for Trump. So, yeah. So yeah, I think that's really the contrast. I think for a lot of Republicans, it seems like they just weren't on board with that. And that was seen increasingly as a threat. And I think even people who are in the Democratic Party, you heard a lot of anecdotal stories. It was hard to measure, but they would have been Democrats for a long time, but then left. They left the Democratic Party because they were just either attacking them or there's so much negativity and kind of like control. And I think people could sense that whether they were conscious of it or not. So, I think the Republican mindset more so is just like all this, everyday censorship stuff. We just want to just leave us alone to create, build, and live our lives. Um, like, can we get back to just being normal and, you respect each other as humans and just, not everything is about, you know, um, power dynamics and race and who oppressed who is oppressing who, and you know someone not entering or accepting your reality in the way that you specifically identify or whatever it might be. So DEI and the woke mind virus, division on a superficial basis, and intolerance versus leave us alone to create, build, and live our lives. And the latter, uh, is just what more people wanted. So that's the other frame that you can put on it. So there are layers to this thing in terms of like the election and how to see it. So let's look at some more fun media I've picked out just for you. Let's see. So yeah, going back to that kind of darkness frame, if you will, darkness versus exploding optimism. Let's just take a quick look at this um, from Stephen Colbert.
Stephen Colbert. Well, it happened again. After a bizarre and vicious campaign fueled by a desperate need not to go to jail, Donald Trump has won the 2024 election. It's almost like you rehearsed that. The deep shock and sense of loss is enormous. Okay, but let's look at the bright side. This way, at least there'll be a peaceful transfer of power. Mike Pence, ollie ollie oxen-free. All day yesterday, I was walking around proudly wearing my I voted sticker. Today, I wore my I am questioning my fundamental belief in the goodness of humanity sticker. Yeah, they give those out. They give those out at the bake sale. Right outside. Now, as a late-night host, people often say to me, come on, part of you's got to want Trump to win because he gives you so much material to work with. No. No one tells the guy who cleans the bathroom, wow, you must love it when someone has explosive diarrhea. There's so much material for you to work with. Come on. Now, you understand that? That good? I wish, you wish, so many of us wish this hadn't happened, but that is not for us to decide. This is a democracy. That's democracy with a capital duh. And in this democracy, the majority has spoken, and they said they don't care that much about democracy. And I want to take a moment to congratulate Kamala Harris and Tim Walz on running an amazing 107-day campaign. It was extraordinary. They hit it right out of the gate. Firstly, I hope they stay in touch. I know they're really good at texting. As
All right. And so you can kind of see the and just kind of quote the framing that Scott Adams put around it. A new minority has formed in the United States, the brainwashed. Looks painful. Seems like a fair assessment. Here's a interesting statement from, and again, we're talking about like persuasion. So how did it get to be this way? Before I read this, how did it get to be this way? Through repetition, through just continuous over years repetition and escalating rhetoric. And what else? In terms of news sources, people just stayed closed. I mean, there were studies done that asked Democrats and Republicans, like, what do you watch? Like, are you aware of what this network says versus what this network says? Where do you get your information from? And the fascinating thing, which I think is a big source of the problem, was that for Democrats, a significant portion, if not a majority, they got their news from just like left-leaning sources. They did not leave the silo. Um, for me, I'm always fascinated to just see like what different news publications in general are saying, because again, like these articles are written by people. And as someone who has been featured in news in the past on a number of occasions, I know that it's just not accurate. Sometimes not accurate in a good way. Makes me look better than whatever. Uh, and sometimes not accurate in a negative way. Like, hey, that's really biased. Like you are just kind of trying to paint a picture that is just not true here. What the hell are you doing, dude? Or madame. So so here's what Farzad had to say. To all Democrats that are watching this unfold and can't understand how the public is voting for such an evil person, take it from a former Democrat. The media has propagandized you. They have lied to you. They do not want to tell you the truth. They just want to make you a rabid Democrat supporter, regardless of how terrible the candidate is, so they can control you. They want your attention. That's it. They don't want to make you smarter or more informed. They want to control you. Want to control you. Today is a chance to break free of their chains. Start by recognizing that it is not your fault. That's actually persuasive. Um, if you blame people for how they feel, you're not going to persuade anyone. It's actually validating. It's not your fault. This is not your fault. I mean, even though kind of is, like if you choose to watch one news source who is, propagandizing you and not giving you information that helps you to better predict the future. Because I think for any Democrat who had been watching news across the spectrum, even if they disagreed with the results or didn't vote for Trump, it would come as a lot less of a surprise that he won, without a doubt. If that person, for those people who were watching across the spectrum but didn't vote for him. These information silos are what close you off whenever you are just intaking information in your life, where there's an assumption of like, and there are videos out there, people saying, I've seen some of them today, like, oh, like I just thought everyone agreed with me with this position. And it's a shock to see that they were actually in the minority. Um, so their grip is very strong. They've been doing this for decades. It is a corrupt system. Do not let other people think on your behalf. Do not outsource your intelligence. Do not let others control your mind. It's yours. Do not be afraid to trust your gut. Do not be afraid to question everything. Do not be afraid to trust your gut. I mean, hasn't their gut been um, that might actually be persuasive because it's like, wait a second, I've been trusting my gut this whole time. So it kind of makes them pause, the reader, if they're in the target market. Because again, like the sale that he's trying to make here is just to kind of crack the door open to say, look, it's not your fault that you're surprised by the results. Um, it's so it's kind of contradictory. Like I've been trusting my gut. What do you mean? So it's kind of a pause, and it kind of is like a reversal in the mind. You have to think about it for a second. So it makes it a little more memorable, I think. So it's like, well, maybe so it kind of plants the seed that maybe the gut is going to tell you to think a different way. Do not be afraid to question everything. Do not be afraid to speak out. We are all Americans. We love each other. We are building this country together. But we cannot do this effectively if we do not let others think on our behalf. On our behalf. Do not support a party just because others have told you to. Do not hate a person just because others have told you to. Only you get to decide on your own merit. No one else. 11 million views for a text post. And Farzad has 250,000 followers. Not bad. Quite viral. Interesting. Fascinating. Um, on the point of the snake eating itself, so I think that the philosophy is just so full of contradictions. I think that this outcome was inevitable, in terms of the contradictions just leading to just a backward system, not based on competence or merit, but based on feelings, arbitrary power shifts, and just undefinable standards. So when you have a system like that, it's bound to collapse. And in this case, the snake ate itself in the form of Kamala Harris versus Joe Biden, who was feeling stabbed in the back. And allegedly, it seems like this whole like melodrama just spilled into the open. I mean, Biden put a Trump MAGA hat on at an event at 9/11. Um, I was amazed when I saw that. I was amazed. And then on top of that, he goes and he has a quote unquote alleged slip, um, where he calls Trump supporters garbage, and then he retracts it, and oopsie, it's just Biden being Biden, right? But of course, it's red meat. It's just red meat for Trump and his team to just. I mean, even if there was an apostrophe, as was claimed, right? Oh, there was an apostrophe. You're talking out loud. How's there an apostrophe? I mean, I think I don't think he intended to do it. Um, if it was an accident, I don't think it was intentional or what he actually thought. I think he was maybe saying like the rhetoric was garbage or whatever. But still, that's just fuel to the Trump campaign, and it was, and they picked up and they ran with it. And Trump's in a garbage truck the next day after a week before he's at McDonald's, and he wears the fucking garbage man vest to a rally. The visuals, just amazing. People walk around for Halloween in garbage bags. People go to the voting polls in garbage, attire, garbage bags even. And and Kamala Harris just has to like try to distance herself from it, not effectively. Um, so and there's all these crazy memes about it as well. So and then on top of that as well, additional evidence. Jill Biden, Joe Biden's wife, the first lady, is seen walking in a red pantsuit to go vote. The optics, as Obama would say, the optics. So that's fascinating, right? I mean, who was she going to vote for? Who did Joe go to vote for? Well, um, enjoy this. Uh, him right here. I'll just frame it up for you. So I cannot get enough of the Biden smile with what I've done with the Michael Bay exit. 10 out of 10. Because also what happened when he came out to the Rose Garden the other day, his staff was waiting for him, everyone's clapping. And you could say, oh, he was smiling because people are cheering him on, his team. But he's the only Democrat who right after the election, he looks happy. Everyone else looks sad, sad, sad. He looks happy. And you got to remember, he put on the MAGA hat, and his wife is dressed in red. So, in terms of building an organization, if you want to have an effective team, I think perceived fairness and helping people to more effectively just like have self-respect and public respect, dignity. This is why if you have critical feedback, you want to be giving it privately to people you work with, people who you employ, people you're managing. And you try to want to soften it often with the feedback, the compliment sandwich. So you say something positive, then you give the real message, and they say end with something positive. Well, I think you're a great person though, but I need you to work on this thing. I need you to not make that mistake or whatever it is. So I used to be so terrible at giving feedback. The feedback sandwich is the best, simplest tactic. Again, the way that it works is if you're managing or collaborating with someone and you need to give feedback, and because like again, you need to be critical about something so that they can improve or do better and get closer to the behavior that you want, you give the feedback sandwich. So you first start with like, Jill, I just want to say like I really enjoy working together. I think that like you're super attentive to the details of, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Literally, like I saw that font that you drew because you're one of our designers the other day, and it's fantastic. It's really great. We got a compliment from this client on it. Um, I want to give you some feedback on something though. So maybe you preface. So I want to give you some feedback, Shildo, on how you can improve because this other client account over here, we had some feedback that was not positive. It was negative, that you missed a key instruction. And, it's really important that when we give you this checklist that you use it. So need you to use it going forward. Um, so please make a note of that. Uh, but again, like you have been wonderful to work with, and I need you just to acknowledge that. If you want to talk about it, let's talk about it. But that's where I need you to improve. So you can sandwich it. You can do compliment, critique, compliment, or you can do compliment, critique, and discuss. Um, all right, so let's check this out. Enjoy. Um, Wait, what was the relevance that we were just talking about there? I cannot get enough of the Biden smile. Yeah, so I mean, again, like he must have felt so stabbed in the back. I mean, even Trump was going on. He's saying, I'm not a fan of Biden, but stabbed in the back. And these Democrats are talking about democracy. They Brutus, they Brutus him. They stabbed him. Um, and yeah, like he was a terrible candidate to run again. He was going to lose. He clearly had dementia. He fell apart in that debate. Um, but kind of the joke here is that Biden, he's sort of been leaning into, okay, you think I'm an old guy with dementia and you kicked me out for that reason. Well, I'll show you. I'm gonna sabotage Kamala. And because they say, oh, he's just pretending to be like a dementia old man. He's not that bad. Um, it's interesting because he comes out to the Rose Garden, I think it was yesterday, and he's so much more cogent in the way that he speaks. I'm sure there's a variety of reasons for it, but um, yeah. So that's the context for this. Of course, the implication being that again, he put the knife right back in Kamala with the garbage comment and the Jill Biden dressing in red, him putting the MAGA cap on. Yeah, hilarious. Kamala versus Joe Biden, the snake that eats itself. Again, because this in my um, observation is where a philosophy that is self-contradicting and inconsistent and is based on undefinable standards and definitions of things, it's just where it inevitably leads. Because really what it's about is power. So let's see, contrarian view on X. It's so I like to give to you, here's a new topic. I like to give you a contrarian view about the X platform because it's actually getting so much attention now. Elon was part of the winning team, right? Switch back here. So Elon Musk, part of the winning team, part of the Trump train over there, and he's getting a lot of credit as he should. I mean, I think it's amazing. I think the level of competence and team effort that's going on over there. I think that you could say that that's a biased statement. I don't think it is. A lot of those people, if I was hiring a team to run a political campaign or even a business, I would not hire Kamala Harris. Like to make me money, for example, like forget about the politics. Like I would not hire Kamala Harris. I would not hire Joe Biden. I would not hire. Um, I mean, Obama. He ran a very competent campaign, but so like his marketing was just hope and change. You still remember it, whether you like the guy or not. His execution and his level of charisma and persuasion just nothing like what we saw this time around. So, um, but everyone's saying that X is and Elon is promoting X as it's the new media, citizen journalism. It's where you go for source of truth. Because had people just been on X, they would have seen what was coming. They would have seen it. But I want to question that and provide a contrarian view. Is X actually good? Um, is it actually good? Because why do I say that? It seems close to being as addictive as TikTok. The algorithm is open source, which is nice. It's nice to be able to say that the algorithm is open source. Okay. Um, but the incentive is to spike your dopamine again and again and again and again and again. right? Ongoing. And I don't think that someone who is necessarily a Democrat would see right leaning, because what I've seen from my experience is like my Democratic friends just completely intolerant, and I think that's also why they lost, the Democrats, because even at I guess like a grassroots level, something about the philosophy or the values, I'm not even sure what it is. I had a childhood friend who I was talking with before the election, and he was, we talked kind of casually. He's like, saying like, "Oh, I don't want to talk about it," and then he would talk about it. Um, and I was like, "But this thing over here, I don't know if you know, but it's not true." He was like, "Yeah, but I saw, Trump said that to the Christians, like, if you vote for me this one last time, this will be the last time you ever have to vote, and that means he's a dictator because that means he's saying out loud." And I was like, "You think he's saying out loud that he's going to be a dictator, and he's going to shut down elections?" And Trump later clarified that in a future interview that, no, it's because Christians, just the turnout is variable, and if all Christians just turned out for him, he would win. Meaning that they could kind of like whatever go back to sleep or not vote in as large numbers as they did for him or that he wanted them to. But that's how my friend interpreted that. He was saying that he was going to be a dictator and shut down elections, and I was like, really? You think he's just? I mean, even the tone of voice, you hear it. The guy is always exaggerating this. The candidate Trump. You really think he's saying that? So again, I don't know. You got to check your blind spots. And similarly, just another friend, Democrat, just nope, can't talk about politics. Nope, can't. It was weird because she initially, when I met her, kind of framed herself as independent, and being on the fence. But I don't think that was the case. I think she always knew who she was going to vote for, and that's fine. Um, but yeah, no, I like to understand. I like to. Um, but my friend from childhood, this we'll call him John. He was like, "Why?" He would ask me questions like, "So, what do you think about climate change? What do you think about JD Vance?" And I would answer him honestly, like on the topic of climate change. Um, I said I reserve. So I learned in philosophy 102 in college. Um, there's this concept called reserving judgment, and it's an amazing thing because it basically means that you can say, I don't have an opinion because I haven't researched enough, because I haven't thought about it enough. I haven't analyzed it enough. It's called reserving judgment. And that's what I told him. I said, on climate change, I think it's a highly politicized issue. And I honestly don't know about the science. I have not investigated this deeply. So I reserve judgment, but I do think it seems like it's a highly politicized issue. And that makes me um, skeptical of it. But overall, I reserve judgment. I'm not saying it's not true, and I'm not saying that it is true. As what was his response? His response was, "LOL. We can't talk politics. Uh, we can't talk about it." Which was odd because it was just the other day that he suggested that we have a call for the very purpose of him telling me about his like a customer that came into his, because he's a bartender. We knew each other since we were 7, so we've just been in touch, on and off. Um, but um, yeah, so he said, we can't talk about it. I was like, really? But you said you wanted to tell me this thing that this cop told you at the bar and why it was making you maybe reassess your point of view. He's like, no, I can't talk politics. And then because I had answered his questions, he didn't want to answer any or even have a discussion. So the whole conversation about that was shut down. And then he became hostile. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, and then it just devolved more. Um, and I just couldn't, because it turned into like cursing. I was like, what are you doing, dude? Like, what is this? Because I told him honestly, I think that you are projecting here. I think you're projecting. Because it was like I've never really seen, or I don't really. I try to not use certain words like narcissist or gaslighting. But in this case, uh, I think this was real gaslighting. It was so odd. He would say, uh, "You insulted me," and then he would just like literally just like curse and like just say insults, and I'm like, okay, I'm not cursing back at you, and what the hell? Like this is weird. This is really weird. Yeah. So that was an attempt to have a discussion with with a Harris voter. So that was interesting. Um, who thought that Donald Trump is and will be a dictator? I guess we shall see. But if I had to put money on it, and I am as a business owner, I predict that he will not be a dictator. Oh man. Um, I do predict that there will be things that probably happen where the left or segments of the left just try to make it seem like, oh, look, see, we told you, we tried to warn you, he's putting people in jail or whatever it is. I'm sure something will come up where that is the case. But yeah, getting back to weaving our way back to X, if my friend or friends had been on X, would they have seen the other side? Would they have seen multiple points of view? I don't think so. Not necessarily, because I think that the algorithm is optimized to give you pleasure, to show you content that you find that makes you happy and agreeable. Because what happens when you are shown information that contradicts your points of view, your voting preference, your political party preference? What um It's called cognitive dissonance is what happens. It means it's almost like mental pain, like it's like resistance, it's like internal resistance. That's cognitive dissonance. Like, like I believe this thing, but I'm seeing data that's the exact opposite. You know, can't compute. It's like it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. Like I saw a family member. I was watching the election with a family member, and he or she was flipping channels, and I could like tell when he would put on CNN, I was fascinated, or MSNBC, which is just um, more more extreme far left. It seems a little more entertaining for that reason. Just this is propaganda. Um, and how do you tell it's propaganda? Because it's not predictive of results or of reality. Um, so anyway, the X algorithm I think is designed to be addictive because that's how they make money. Um, And I don't see, especially now, I don't see anything that is not, you know, pro. I see people making fun of, people who are saying like, oh, the election, um, is it's a dark outcome, blah blah blah. But I don't actually see in like a genuine, unframed form, that other side truly without that kind of, So I see the kind of the more extreme rather than the more cogent arguments in favor of, well, what did Kamala do right? What did she not do right? Or whatever it might be. So I think that the algorithm is designed to produce little echo chambers for everyone. So I don't think that um, it's designed to help anyone be more objective necessarily. I think it's designed to keep people on the platform and keep them entertained, to keep them scrolling. So that's something we can talk more about another day. I call it the electric life with a K. Electric because there are neurobiological electrical signals propagating throughout our nervous system, and electric with a K because social media and other dopamine addicting, inducing mechanisms, screens, technology. It's all a trick. We'll talk more about that and develop that another day. We got to get through the rest of this news. Let's see. Tweet about intolerance. I think we went over that. Let's see. I think we can wrap up with a bunch of things. So propaganda, persuasion, brainwashing. Yeah, I mean, we looked at AOC and Jimmy Kimmel. We saw the girl screaming, hilarious. We heard from Fazad. Again, huge optimism. It just contrasts with the accelerationist video, which I showed you at the beginning, and Naval's economic sonic boom. It's going to release a wave, resulting in an economic sonic boom of growth. So big contrast. Two totally different realities. They cannot both be true. They cannot. They are in conflict with each other. But I'm sure people will try to make the darkness point of view be true. AI news and the nature of consciousness. It does kind of feel like, at least at the moment, it feels quiet, almost like maybe there's a pause happening. Maybe there's a reevaluation happening. There's a lack of leadership right now. I mean, perhaps some of those leaders have been vanquished from the scene, defeated. Hard to say. But this is politics, and Democrats still will control, well, not the House and not the Senate and not the presidency. Uh, and then Trump is said to have a mandate, which is, a fair interpretation, I suppose you could say, since it's an across-the-board win. Looks like they might pick up maybe additional House seats and Senate seats. So, yeah, I don't know. But I think that if the Democrats want to ever win, because I don't agree with everything, that Trump and Republicans put forward. And just the Democrats went very far left. So, but there are certain things that I do agree with, though. And I think that if they ever want to win, I just hate the lust for power, whether it's on, from right-leaning politicians or left-leaning. It just seems it's more concentrated at this moment in history, on the left. So I just don't like people just vying for power and status that is unearned, and without merit. Identity versus merit. I think that's part of the philosophical contradiction, or the battle of ideas that was waged this past election. Identity versus merit. AI news and the nature of consciousness. All right, so it's getting late. It's like after 2 a.m. So let's get this idea out there. I think it's interesting to wrap up with this. It's an idea I'm developing in real time. So this is related to AI and the nature of consciousness. Professional learning requires consciousness. Most of our lives, we are unconscious. Consciousness is like the monk on top of the snowy mountaintop. Okay, this is kind of an analogy for, again, what is happening in our brain, because there's so much hardware and software underneath that it's hard to even access or be aware of. I propose, and this is echoed by other thinkers like Scott Adams on the topic, that consciousness is the extra layer of software that's able to reflect and look down, like 30,000 foot view, reflect and look down on how well its other software, even including like past conscious choices and actions, have predicted reality, how well it has that other software, including itself, predicted reality over time. Meaning, real time feedback, or future events coming into the present. Did they happen? Did they not? And when we're wrong, if we are conscious, we use this special part of our software and we make adjustments. This is how you learn the guitar. You learn it consciously on your mind without words, which is interesting, a point by itself. In other words, like you might move, like you're learning guitar and you might move your fingers slower when you want to learn something because you want to hit the right notes. You're trying to teach, in other words, your brain to do it the right way. So you move it slower, but there's no words involved necessarily. Um, but then over time with the guitar scenario, you can go faster and faster as you master it. And those neural connections, they change. The new connections form. Um, the notes of business, the notes of business we play often, um, and often the sound we hear back, something might be off. So like we do a marketing campaign and it doesn't work. So the something is off. And so we must acknowledge this, reflect with words and logic. So it's kind of at another level, I would argue. Like a level one is more intuitive with the guitar scenario, but level two is more analytical, logical. You have to think slower, um, using words and logical reasoning, wording, specifically in order to access how to better place our fingers, meaning make better decisions to achieve the goal of growth, profit, and harmony in our enterprise. So, again, the idea is that um, consciousness, if this is true, why does this matter? Well, it matters for AI in terms of like how do we develop true artificial intelligence, or what you might call artificial superintelligence, or just AI on the level of like a human being. All right, and thinking in a way that is similar to us. So consciousness, by this definition, is it's almost like a skill, and it's almost and it is, and I am saying it's literally something that it's like your focused attention needs to kind of like come to a point where it's like I am in this moment and I am and you could be unconsciously kind of conscious too, where it's kind of like the guitar scenario where it's more intuitive. I think it comes to the highest point when I think you're using words and analysis and logic um, to reflect. But I think you can definitely relate this to what is happening. Um, like, why do people keep making the same mistakes? I think it's because of the lack of reflection. And I think you could argue, therefore, a lack of consciousness. I think that it is a true statement to say that we go through a far, far more significant percentage of our lives being unconscious, completely unconscious, than we even realize. I mean, do you remember driving today, the other day? Like, were you thinking about driving? Or was your body, because of practice, just subconsciously making dozens of different calibrations and small decisions? Like, do you remember every moment of the drive? Or were you up here thinking, imagining something else? Probably you were imagining something else, having a conversation with someone. But how conscious were you even in that conversation? How conscious were you when you stepped into the shower? How conscious were you when you made dinner? So I think to be conscious is similar to what people mean when they say to be present. Like I am here right now. I am thinking right now. I'm in this moment. It is 2:16 a.m. and and I am tired, and I'm going to end this first episode podcast very soon. But I think that's the nature of consciousness, to measure uh, sort of your prediction for what you're doing, whether it's on guitar or in terms of making a business decision about like marketing, for example. Well, the campaign did or didn't work. Why didn't it work? Well, again, you kind of have to read between the lines, massage it, try to get more information, more data, different perspectives, perhaps. And then, you try again. You launch a new campaign, and this time the fingers were on the right frets on the guitar. So the music of business sounded good. The campaign worked. The open rate was higher. The clicks were higher. The sales increased. So that is a developing theory that I have about the nature of consciousness. And I think it is really interesting that we think about this idea that perhaps many of us are actually unconscious, maybe all the time, maybe all the time. And maybe when we jokingly say that some people are NPCs, maybe they are, maybe they aren't, because maybe we do, or maybe we don't live in a simulation. But another explanation could be just, why do some of us just not learn or change our behavior? It's like, oh, you're dumb. Well, maybe it's just because there's a lack of consciousness, and maybe consciousness is or isn't, but hopefully is a skill. And if we practice it, we can really excel and we can accomplish anything. And we can just have better relationships and better politics because we're not fighting about, you know, stupid identity, DEI, woke mind virus stuff that is ultimately just the snake eating itself. It is self destructive. Um, so that's all I'd like to talk about for today. I had some other news topics that we can go into about AI, but perhaps I'll say that for another time. There is so much news to get through, and this is my first episode of this Masscast News. I would love to hear from you. If you actually watched this far, you must have really liked it. So I would love to hear from you. Any feedback at all, greatly appreciate. So I will be doing these ongoing, at least for a little while, see how it goes. Uh, but let me know. I would love to hear from you. Um, and if you are interested in growing your business, do check out my company at grubbo.com. We provide an all-in-one, on-demand team of professionals, humans, you can just delegate any digital marketing task that you want to get done to for a flat, fixed monthly fee. It's just a very wide variety of skill sets that you get, up to 13, in fact, copywriters, designers, developers. So it's an all-in-one team, and it's just a tremendous value for a fraction of the cost of what you would pay to hire someone on your own. Check it out at Growbo, Growbo, Growbo.com. I hope you enjoyed this first episode of the Masscast News. Mass standing for Marketing, AI, Sales, and Scaling. My name is Matt Ack, and I will talk to you later. Keep growing, keep thinking, keep being conscious. Definitely practice your consciousness. Oh, and how do you practice being conscious? I think this is worth adding. Get a journal. Get a journal and write for just 15 minutes a day. It will change your life for the better. Really. Do it. I'll see you later. Keep growing. Stay focused. Stay conscious. I'll see you later.